Disturbing tales that will keep you awake tonight. Asterisk, asterisk, my grandmother was a total recluse. In my entire 26 years, I'd never once set foot inside her house. So you can imagine when her lawyer called to tell me I'd inherited the property. My first feeling wasn't grief. It was this deep, almost shameful curiosity. All of a sudden, I owned a place that had been a complete mystery my whole life. A place just a few towns over that felt more remote than the moon. It wasn't until I spent my first night there that I started to understand that some mysteries are better left unsolved. And some doors are never, ever meant to be opened. The call came on a Tuesday. The lawyer, a guy named Mr. Gable, whose voice sounded as dry as old paper, spoke in these clipped, passionless sentences. He told me about my grandmother Alara's passing, about the will, and about the house. There wasn't anyone else. My mom, her only kid, died years ago and had been estranged from Alara long before that. I was the last of the line, the only heir to a woman I only knew from whispered family warnings and a single faded photo of a severe-looking woman with eyes that stared right through the camera. The keys are in a lockbox by the front door. The code is your mother's birthday, Mr. Gable said, rattling off the 6 digits that felt like a secret handshake with the past. The property is yours, Mr. Alistair, as is everything inside. That weekend, I made the 2-hour drive. The town was one of those forgotten little spots that time just seemed to skip over, tucked deep in a valley of thick woods. Her house was at the very end of a long, unpaved road, set way back from the other homes, almost like it was shunning them on purpose. It was a tall, severe-looking Victorian, all sharp angles and peeling gray paint, with a sagging porch and windows like vacant eyes. A rusted, bent iron fence circled the property, its gate groaning when I pushed it open. The air here just felt different. Heavier, it smelled like damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else. Something faintly metallic and sweet, like old pennies and wilted flowers. I found the lockbox, the numbers clicking way too loudly in the oppressive silence. The key was cold and ornate in my hand. For a second, I just stood there on the porch, my heart hammering. This felt less like an inheritance and more like I was trespassing. Taking a deep breath, I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a grating shriek, and the heavy oak door swung open, sighing out a lungful of stale, trapped air. The foyer was dark, draped in shadows. I fumbled for a light switch, and with a click, a single bare bulb flickered on, casting this sick yellow glow on the scene. Dust. Everything was covered in a thick, uniform layer of gray dust. It lay over the grand staircase like a burial shroud, and muted the colors of the carpet. Little clouds of it puffed up with every single step. The furniture was all there, heavy, dark wood pieces covered in white sheets like sleeping ghosts. But there was a strangeness here that went beyond just neglect. There were no pictures, no paintings on the walls, just faint rectangles where they used to be, no knickknacks, no clutter. None of the junk you collect after a long life. It was like the house had been deliberately scrubbed of any personality, any memory of the woman who lived and died here. I spent the first hour just wandering the downstairs. The living room with its giant sheet-covered sofa. The dining room, where a long table sat with a silent meeting of chairs around it. And the kitchen, a relic from the 50s with peeling linoleum and a faint sour smell coming from the fridge. Everything was tidy in its place, but totally lifeless. My plan was simple. Spend a few weeks sorting through her stuff, see what was worth anything, and then sell the place. It was a free house, a windfall. At least that's what I kept telling myself. That first night, I decided to just sleep on the couch. I couldn't bring myself to go upstairs yet. I ordered a pizza from the only joint in town that delivered, and The teenager on the phone sounded genuinely surprised to get an order for this address. I ate it sitting on the floor, the box as my table. The silence of the house was absolute, a deep, ringing quiet that was way more unnerving than any noise. I just chalked it up to being in the country, away from the city hum later. As I was lying there in a sleeping bag I'd brought, I heard the first sound. It was a faint creak from the floorboards upstairs. The house is just settling, I told myself, my eyes wide open in the dark. It's an old house. Old houses make noises. But then I heard another and another. It wasn't random. It sounded like slow, deliberate footsteps pacing in a room right above me. I held my breath, listening. The pacing went on for what felt like an hour. A steady, rhythmic tread, back and forth, back and forth. Then, as suddenly as it started, it just stopped. I lay there for a long time, my logical brain fighting this rising tide of primal fear, until exhaustion finally dragged me under. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the filthy windows, burning away the shadows and my nighttime fears. It was just an old house. My imagination, fueled by this creepy setting, had just gotten the better of me. I felt like an idiot. I made coffee on a camp stove I brought and decided to finally tackle the second floor. The grand staircase groaned. Under my weight, each step a drawn-out complaint. The upstairs hallway was long and dark with a bunch of closed doors. The air was colder up here, and that strange, sweet smell was stronger. I opened the first door. A bathroom, its mirror cloudy with age. The second, an empty guest room, bare. Floors. The third door, at the very end of the hall, was my grandmother's bedroom. A weird hesitation grabbed me. My hand just hovered over the tarnished brass knob. Pushing the feeling down, I turned it and went in. The room was surprisingly empty. A big four-poster bed, stripped of its mattress. A wardrobe, a dresser, and a small writing desk by the window. It was there I noticed the wallpaper. It was a faded floral pattern, but underneath it, I could just make out these faint rhythmic lines, almost like a pulse or a wave, repeating over and over. What an odd design. I ran my hand over it. The paper was brittle, but the wall underneath, it felt strange, not hard and cold like plaster, but sort of yielding with a bizarre warmth to it, like touching skin through a layer of old paper. I snatched my hand back, a shiver running down my spine. Over the next few days, the house's quirks got worse. The footsteps upstairs became a nightly thing, always starting around midnight. Then a new sound started, a low rhythmic thumping, so deep I felt it in my chest more than I heard it. It seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. Asterisk thump thump, thump thump like a giant submerged heart. I tried to explain it. The plumbing, a problem with the heating, but the water was off and the furnace in the cellar was cold and dead silent. The house started to feel less like a building and more like a living thing. I'd be in one room and hear a door creak open in another. I'd leave a book on a table and find it on the floor. They were small things I could almost convince myself I'd done and just forgotten, but the doubt was this creeping vine, twisting around my sanity. The feeling of being watched was constant, a heavy pressure on the back of my neck. One afternoon, I was in the kitchen and dropped a spoon. As I bent down to get it, my eyes were drawn to the floorboards. The wood grain seemed wrong. Instead of straight lines, it swirled in patterns like dark water. And the gaps between the boards, they seemed wider. I peered closer, my breath catching in my throat. Down in the darkness of the subfloor, something glistened. It wasn't empty space. It looked wet, organic, and it seemed to be shifting with a slow, pulsing motion. I scrambled backward, my heart pounding. What did I just see? I forced myself to look again, shining my phone's flashlight into the crack. It was just dark, old, dusty wood and cobwebs. Did I imagine it? Was I actually going insane? The isolation was getting to me. I tried calling a friend, but my phone, which worked fine in town, had zero signal here. The landline was dead. One morning, I decided I'd had enough. I was going to pack a bag, drive to a hotel, and call Mr. Gable in the morning to handle everything from a distance. I threw my stuff in my duffel bag, slammed the front door behind me, and walked to my car. I put the key in the ignition, nothing. Not even a click. The battery was completely dead. Cold, sharp panic started to set in. I was trapped here. That night, I knew I had to find answers. If this house had a secret, my grandmother had to have known it. I went to her bedroom, straight to that small writing desk. The drawers were mostly empty, but in the very back of the bottom drawer, under a false bottom, I found a small, leather-bound journal. Her handwriting was a tight, spidery scrawl. The first few pages were normal enough notes about her garden, the weather. But then the tone started to change. Asterisk October 12th, 1978. The hunger is worse today. The floorboards in the west room are warping again. It wants more than the birds I leave for it. I feel its impatience in the air. It groans at night. Asterisk May 3rd, 1985. I had a visitor. A salesman. He was persistent. I had to be rude to make him leave. The house was excited. I could feel the walls thrumming. A close call. I must never have visitors again. Its appetite grows with proximity to life. Asterisk July 21st, 1999. My daughter, my sweet girl, wants to visit. She wants me to know her child, my grandson. I had to refuse. I told her I wanted nothing to do with her. The lie was like acid, but the alternative. The thought of a child in this place. The hunger would be ravenous. It is better that they hate me and are safe than love me and are consumed. Asterisk, the journal went on like this for years. My grandmother wasn't a recluse by choice. She was a warden, a keeper. She wasn't living in the house. She was managing it, appeasing it with small animals, starving it, hoping its ancient life would finally just burn out. She sacrificed her family, her reputation, everything to keep this thing contained, and now she was gone. And the house, after years of starvation, was awake. And it was ravenous. As I read that last entry, a terrifying thought hit me. The footsteps I heard every night weren't a memory. They were an invitation. The house was pacing, waiting for me. Suddenly, the deep thumping sound returned, louder than ever before. Asterisk thump dash thump. Thump dash thump dot asterisk. It was all around me now. The entire house vibrating with the rhythm of some monstrous heart. The floral pattern on the wallpaper began to writhe, the lines beneath it pulsing with a dim red light. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting. The room was becoming the living room. I scrambled out of the bedroom, my feet pounding on the floor. As I ran down the hall, I dared to look back. The wallpaper was peeling away, Its appetite grows with proximity to life. She had starved it, kept it weak. My presence here, my life, my energy. It was a feast. I had woken it up and made it strong again, and then something snapped. A hot, defiant rage cut right through. The fear. I was not going to be a meal. The maw was only feet away, its fleshy throat writhing. With a scream that tore out of my lungs, I turned and threw myself at the window beside the door. I didn't feel the glass shatter. I didn't feel it slice into my arms and face. I just felt the sudden, shocking blast of cold night air. I tumbled through the frame and landed hard in the overgrown bushes, thorns and branches tearing at me. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain, and just ran. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I could feel its anger, a wave of pure evil washing over the yard. I could hear the house behind me, a symphony of groaning wood and a low, furious roar of thwarted hunger. I vaulted the rusted iron gate and didn't stop running until the dirt road turned to asphalt, until the sounds of the woods were replaced by the distant hum of a highway. I never went back. I called Mr. Gable from a payphone, my voice shaking, and told him to sell the property, sight unseen, for whatever he could get. Burn it down, I told him. Level it. He must have thought I was insane. Maybe I was. I still had nightmares. I see the pulsing walls, the swirling wood grain, and the fleshy, hungry floor. I wake up to the phantom sound of a deep, resonant heartbeat. Sometimes I think about the new owners. The lawyer mentioned a young family, excited for a cheap Victorian, with good bones. I wonder if they notice the strange chill in the upstairs hall. I wonder if they hear the faint footsteps at midnight. I wonder if they've noticed that the floorboards in the living room have started to warp, and that sometimes when the light is just right, something dark and wet seems to glisten in the cracks. I hope they get out. But I know, with a certainty, that chills me to my core, that the house is patient, and the house is always hungry. The most terrifying monsters are the ones we can't see, the ones that hide in plain sight in the places we call home. Have you ever felt that a place was just wrong? A house with a history you could feel in its very walls? Share your own unsettling experiences in the comments below. And if you want to hear more tales that will keep you awake at night, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know what's waiting in the dark.